Like the Real Housewives of Max Verstappen up in here.
Checo's checked out.
Joe Lonyu is off the track. That steak is cooked.
A lot is at stake for Steak F1.
Man, even the broadcast couldn't handle that stat.
My heart almost was screaming like, how can anybody be a Lewis Hamilton fan?
No.
Not on my 2024 bingo card.
Yeah, you're gonna have to create a new one now.
Hey guys, and welcome back to Lights Out Latest. My name is Marina. I'm here with Steven and Tristan. Unfortunately, Jason is not with us because he is at the Senior US Open. He's having a grand old time. He'll be back next week. Usually, we start the Grand Prix weekend recap by starting with our headlines and then moving all the way through the race weekend. The Austrian Grand Prix, though, it was a little different. So we're going to start with the ending to it all. I want to hear your thoughts on the Lando and Max collision.
The ending that encapsulated the race. Yeah. I'm sure we're going to be talking about it for a week, too, because the online world is currently debating as to who's at fault, who's this, who's that. I saw that race, and in particular the incident, as just such a big racing deal. It was. If you look at, again, this was all post after the pit stops. Max was his advantage because he had a little bit of a mishap on pit road. It's fine. And Lando was able to strike. It became a scrap fest. It was Lando trying to strike at any corner he could. Lots of dive bombs. They raced it really well, though. Like, Max would know exactly what Lando was going to do and would strike back with the crossover on the exit of the apex of the turn. And then it came to a head. And if you look at the video, Lando is hugging the racing line not the racing line, the berm, the outside of the road. If he's going enough to his left, he might get a penalty for going off the track, essentially. Yeah. Track limits. And Max is doing exactly what he should be doing. He's pushing him hard. He's making sure he's got as minimal amount of track to make that outside move happen. And he just touches him. And to me, it wasn't like, I'm sure if you're a fan of either or, and sure, Marina, I'm sure you have some feelings towards it. And that in terms of the Lando fans are like, oh, Max, the guy who said he never messes up. He's amazing. And he messed up. He ruined our boy. They were racing hard. Man. Pure racing. Superman can't win every day, you know.
That is facts.
Superman messes up, too.
Hey, preach to the choir, man.
I thought it was just, to me, it's incredible. It's incredible that we're having our leaders battle like that. You know what I mean? So that made me very happy. I don't know what your guys' pure feelings are on it, but I'm curious to hear.
Yeah. Well, I'll say to start off, Tristan, you were talking about last podcast, how you're looking for more rivalries in F1. Well, I think you just got one.
I must, dude.
Yep. And, I agree with you 100% there, Tristan. I think, again, Lando was holding his line going into that corner. I think he was trying to go around the outside. And I do think, whether it was Max's fault or not, whether he was doing it intentionally, he did get loose. He did get into Lando, punctured his tire. But the thing that I'll say that kind of hurts my feelings is the fact that he went back out and then hit Lando's wing, which kind of bothered me.
Yeah. I think it was just to me, because again, I saw...
I don't know if that was a Max. I don't know if that was a fully Max, like, let me close the door again, because Max had a puncture at that point. So I think
it could be a control thing.
A bit out of proportion. I think Max obviously was taking that line because I think he was trying to get off the racing line, because that wasn't the racing line. And I think Lando was probably trying to do the same. And I think Max lost control a little bit. I mean, he has 3 tires at that point, right? So I think partially that was that incident. So I understand
it could be,
and where people are coming from with that. But I think it was less out of because at that point, if you're going to hit each other again, you're both going flying because you're both one wheel down. And I don't think, especially because they are such good friends off track, I don't think either of them wanted to hurt the other person. It wasn't out of
No, that's fair. And the other thing I was... Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I see your point, just to continue that statement, I see your point, Steven. I fully agree with Marina. I think he just didn't have... he was riding basically a tri-wheel at that point.
No, I mean, it
sure was immediate. It immediately happened. The tire was immediately down, and I was just like, man, I don't know if you guys have ever driven a car with a flat tire. It freaking sucks. And
I can imagine.
Not very well at all. So I just think it was just a little, they were trying to get out of that corner in general.
Yeah. And the other thing is, too, I'll say that maybe it was the final nail in the coffin for McLaren fans is when Matt, and again, it very well could have been just a control thing. When Lando was going on the inside on the straight there, and Max went down on him and forced him wide. That also was not pretty and didn't help his cause, I don't think, either.
No.
Yeah, that's, again, I mean, the thing is, there's so much to unpack here because I think this goes farther. I think we can all agree this goes farther back than just this race, especially for Lando. And the other thing is, too, Max was dealing with some problems this race. He sounds like he has some gearbox problems. He was struggling with that. And then also he was, of course, I guess it's a normal Max thing to be complaining about the tires. But yeah, so there was that. And then also, you know, Lando coming off of the disappointing race last week. And then, you know, he was, again, you touched on it. It was a normal Max race for most of the race. He was out like 8 seconds or so, and then, you know, Max had that bad pit stop at about 6.5 seconds, whereas Lando, I think, had like, I think it was like 1.9, 2.9 second stop. Yeah, so that brought the lead down to about a second. And yeah, Lando, you know, I will give him this. I like the fact that he didn't back down, because I think that's a problem he's had in the past. I think he's become too soft, if that makes sense. Yeah. This one, you could tell that he's like, okay, I'm not letting this one get away again. And of course, Max, you know, the way Max is, and of course I applaud him for it too, he's not going to back down either. But when you have two people fight like that, something's just got to go wrong. And unfortunately, they're both a culprit. But
I will agree with you on that. I think they were both very, very, very aggressive. I like that you went all the way back to the pit stop, because truthfully, that's when all of this happened, right? Max had an 8-second lead. Max was going to win this race, and everybody knew it easily, right? If he gets a good stop like we know Red Bull to do, that race was over, you know? And I think that stop, not only did it make Max pissed, like you heard the radio message, him coming out of the pit lane being like, what the fuck was that, you know, pardon my language, but you know, that's what he said. And
don't get fine now, wink wink.
Exactly. And just being very, very mad that like we don't make mistakes like this. And even after the race, he was very clear, and he was very hard on the team, saying we lost this race because of that mistake. And whether or not, you know, we collided at the end or anything, that wouldn't even have happened if Red Bull hadn't made that mistake. It was crucial, right?
I just don't want to blame, like, it's hard to say we made this mistake. It looked like it was a technical issue. Again, I haven't
it did look like
it looked like the gun jammed. Like, in terms of
something like that, it happens. It's not necessarily the crew members' fault. It's just the old
absolutely. I don't think that it was I don't think there's anything they could have done. Like, they did the best they could.
It happens.
But unfortunately, that's how it happened. And just like we saw, like in Miami with the safety car helping Lando, and then in was it Canada where safety car helped Max, you have these things that are pretty much outside of your control that do happen that make the race what it is, right? It's part of motorsport. My whole thing is that I think that while I can't agree that Max, he was moving quite a bit under braking for a couple of laps. He was being very aggressive. And I think that 2021 Max made a bit of an appearance where he knew he didn't have the faster car, because I think that was a crucial part of 2021 that people don't really talk about, is for a lot of the year, he didn't have the best car. Mercedes had the best car. And I think when you're in a position where you know you don't have the best car, you're on older tires, you're sitting there you're basically just waiting for them to pounce. And if you're Max Verstappen, you're not going to let it happen, right? He's racing the hardest he can. So I think that had a lot to do with it. Ultimately, I think they were both very, very, very aggressive. But my beef is with the commentators who put 100% all of the blame on Max for getting everything that happened all of those laps before, when Lando was sending dive bombs, which I thought were, honestly, they were rough. They were bad. Like they weren't good.
They weren't good dive bombs. Definitely.
He was defending against a madman. Like, I mean, you can't like how can you predict what to do? How can I mean, that's why I was agreeing with you on that, Marina. Like, why blame the man? He was dealing with an absolute maniac behind him trying to get past. Like,
Norris finally lost his patience, and he'd finally said, you know what? I know this is Max Verstappen. He's a 3-time world champion. He's in a Red Bull, but I have the better car, and I am a good driver. Finally, I think I give him on that end, where it was finally like, I'm not going to be the victim anymore. I'm not going to be the one that says, oh, Max just had the better car. He was just the better racer. No, I'm a good racer. I'm worthy of a world championship, and I'm going to fight him really hard. The problem with that happens is then you have two Max Verstappens, Because in 2021, you had Max Verstappen and you had Lewis Hamilton, who was complacent. Now you have Max Verstappen and Lando Norris, who, from what I can tell, at least from this race, is no longer going to be complacent, no longer, like you said, just going to let him through, right? Like,
he's not going to lift. He's not lifting.
So my beef with is just with the commentators. Really, I think it was a racing incident, and I think the commentators put a lot of blame on Max Verstappen over and over again, saying 2021 Max is back now that he doesn't have the faster car. But look at all the other races we've had so far since Miami, where Max had to fight. He had wheel-to-wheel racing, and this never happened. He had battles with Lando. He had battles with Russell. He had battles with Lewis, with Carlos. Like, he had battles with a lot of people, and this didn't happen. I think it was just the two of them being overly aggressive, both really wanting the win. Yeah. And I think it's important to acknowledge that Lando was also very aggressive. And I think that's something the commentators didn't acknowledge. So that's Red Bull fan, Max Verstappen fan on thing. Again, I'm no expert, so take what I say with a grain of salt. But
I think you nailed it. I really do think you nailed it. Like, and again, this coming from me is like, you know, Steven might be more opinionated because he is a Lando fan, but like, I think at the end of the day, if you're a racing fan, you need to have that perspective. I think you were spot on. So, no quarrels there, no qualms, no nothing. I think you nailed it.
Well, I think also, I was just going to say, to add to that also, I think at the time, especially at the Lap 64 incident, Lando was at a point where he had nothing to lose because he had gotten to the point where if he got another off track, he was going to get a 5-second penalty.
Well, he had already been off track because the thing is,
well, I guess it was under investigation still.
Penalty right after the collision, meaning it had already come through. Because by the time we see it, it's been probably at least 30 seconds to a minute from the time it actually came in.
True.
I didn't listen to Lando's onboard, so I don't know if he knew that by then. I'm assuming he didn't because it was really quick.
Yeah.
But I think that he was conscious of the fact that he had been over for that last time. He was going to get a 5-second penalty. So either he went past now with, was it 6 laps or 7 laps to go, and eked out that 5-second gap to win the race, or his race was finished. He was going to finish P2, but he wasn't going to win the race.
Yeah.
So I think
that's what the commentators were saying.
So, the other thing that really pissed me off was Lando Norris going to his thing, and I love Lando. I'm a Lando fan as well as a Max fan, but Lando went to the media and he said, I was fighting fair and Max wasn't, and that pissed me off. That
sucks.
Made me throw something at the wall. I was so mad. I almost threw my phone at the wall because I was like, listen, you can say Max was unfair, and I will agree with that. I'm a Max fan. I can admit to that. And you can't put all the blame on him. And that's what Max did well. He didn't blame Lando. He didn't put the blame on himself. He said, I need to see it again. Because from in the car, I think what I took from his interview was kind of that he didn't even know exactly where Lando was until they made contact. So
emotions are high too when you're in
the car. That's what I was going to say.
Like, you never want to react when you're in the car still. But like until that last corner, I feel like it was all is fair in love and war. That's what it felt like. I didn't think either of them were like, it was, I don't know, I saw hard racing. That's what I saw. I didn't think either of them like overstepped here. Even if they did, it wasn't one-sided at all. Like, I think Max defended hard and Lando raced hard, like offensively, to try and get past it. I think Lando's in the wrong for that take, in my opinion.
Well, in defense of Lando, I will say, I think you say this about any driver. I think it's hard to take these things right after a race like this.
Yes.
I think you can't go off of what he just said, because I think his emotions are running high, and you know, you see it all the time in football, NASCAR, any sport. Anytime that you go to a person who is just, you know, gut punched, they're gonna be mad about it, and they're gonna say their feelings. And that's what the media is going to do, you know? They're going to go after that. That's what they're looking for. And to your point, that's what they did with Max. I mean, they're going to go for the story, and they're going to go for what's appealing to them, what's not necessarily true. But, I mean, it's the unfortunate truth. Yeah.
I think it would have been in Lando's best interest maybe then if he just didn't say anything. Like, you know? It helps your brand to be, like, more vocal and more emotionally driven sometimes. So, like, I mean, again, that's going to get clicks if he's like, no, like, Max messed up. Like, obviously the media love it. We sort of love it, I guess, but
I'm impartial.
I mean, I was gonna say I'm kind of impartial too. I just think it's because I have that exact same like thought, Steven, of like, I know he just got out of the car. Like, give it a couple of days, and I'm sure he's not doing that at all. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's totally
all I gotta say is Max and Lando just gotta go into some couple therapy, and we'll be all okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I have no doubt.
If this podcast was sponsored by BetterHelp, We would tell them to get on there. Please sponsor us.
I think Lawrence Barretto did the interview for F1, and he asked Lando, was like, "Are you going to speak to Max?" And he said, "I think that's on Max's end to come and apologize to me," which honestly I don't think was the best response he could have given, because I do think that they were both kind of in the wrong there. But I do think that they're going to talk about it. Max said, "I want to look at the footage again. I want to see it from all the angles, and then I'll go talk to Lando." But I thought it was interesting that they crossed each other several times. The pen, they didn't cross eyes. They were still, like you said, they're still in the heat of the moment. They're still in that car, in that helmet. And until you step away from that, like Max said, rewatch all the angles, that's when you get the full picture. But I think we're all in a consensus that it was a racing incident. Mm-hmm. Go for it. I think you're going to say something.
I got one more thing, and this coincides with what you just said. Let them talking about it. If I want the rivalry I want, don't let them talk about it. That's no.
Wow, yeah, of course.
If it's strong feelings on both sides, no words between each other. Talk on the
settle on the racetrack, baby.
Yeah, talk on the track, Steven.
Yep. With you there, because I think even if they talk about it and they assume mutual blame or they still have their disagreements about who's at fault, I still think that neither of them would take it back. Neither of them regret their actions.
Yeah.
So I don't think that anything on track will change, because I think something like Steven was saying, something clicked inside Lando where he's like, I'm not going to be complacent anymore. I'm not just going to let Max, be Max and take advantage, not take advantage. Cause I think Max does take advantage of people. And for a long time, the drivers said like, oh, Max is going to win, but we'll see who comes P2. And I think they're finally in a place where McLaren is fast enough, Mercedes are fast enough, they can win a race. They did win a race.
Yeah.
So, which nobody's really talking about, but we will talk about it.
Yeah. The other thing I was just gonna say real quick, I want to get y'all's opinion on. What do y'all think? Do you think Max should have given back the position to Lando?
Oh, was it lap before or 2 laps before with the?
Yeah.
No, I don't think so. I don't think there was even a millimeter where Max could have stayed on the track. Use the last millimeter of track, and in that sense, no. But also on the other hand, we had seen these incidents before, and I think because Lando, when he was pushed wide by Max, gave the position back, Max should have done the same. I don't think either of them should have given the position back. I think they both rightfully pushed wide and they went along the outside, and it happens. But but since Lando gave it back, I think Max respectfully should have given it back too.
Yeah. Well, my whole thing is I think they should have gone. I think the FIA or someone should have stepped in. There should have been like a mutual agreement. They just go side by side, do like a little rolling race there.
That'd be awesome.
Like, okay, go. And just settle it that way. I think that could be plausible too. Like if you do that at a certain speed, I think you could do that.
What do you do about the other cars, though?
Well, no, you're going fast enough that no one's going to catch up to you. You know what I mean?
I don't know what the margin was at the time to third.
Yeah, but I just don't like that Max stayed in that position. Like he went off track, and then obviously because I think Lando does have a point that he was in front slightly of Max at the corner at the apex there. When Max went off. So I don't think it's fair to Lando that Max was just able to run off the street basically and come back on like, oh, I'm back.
Yeah.
It's like, oh.
But I think there's a lot of things where other outside forces that weren't just the two drivers with their helmets and all of their, aggressiveness that could have stepped in. I think that, for example, if the FIA had given Lando his penalty the lap before when he Red Bull would have had enough time to go and get on the radio to Max and be like, listen, he has a 5-second penalty. Defend all you want, but we don't want a collision. If you crash, like you just did, you're going to lose the win. But if you let him through, you still win on paper because they had, 7 laps left. I doubt Lando would have.
With them, just don't let him get too far out. Yeah.
Not
well, I think that's
Max would become the complacent and be like, okay, just go.
Yeah.
But he wasn't going to fight as hard as he did. He wasn't going to move so much under braking. So
Well, I think to your point also, that's probably one of the more underrated parts of this as well. I know I said that, Lando, he had that 5-second penalty for exceeding track limits. So I think that also actually probably played into a part of Max's aggressiveness. Yeah. He was probably like, well, I can push this guy around because, he's going to have to earn it. even more now because he has to do it clean. Not only does he have to do it at all, he has to do it cleanly. He can't just, quote unquote, roll off track. He has to do it cleanly, and Max can kind of do whatever he wants with him, which I'm sure was even more frustrating for Lando.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, he's like, oh gosh, now I have to pass the best guy on track clean. Like,
no. That's what I'm saying, though, is like these tractors that they drive, like how big they are. Like I feel like Lando is just trying to make a square peg fit in a round hole. Like he was trying to make that car work in those corners. And I love Austria, great racetrack, but it's a common issue with all the tracks. The cars are just too big to make some of those moves. I mean,
and also something we could talk about also, what the heck are we doing with gravel tracks on the track? What is that?
Okay.
Like, let's
move on. I think we can come to an overall consensus. I'm sure we'll continue to mention it here and there throughout the pod, and probably still next week when we have Max and Lando back out on track in Silverstone. Let's talk about the other elements of the weekend, starting with, like you said, the gravel traps. And I want to talk about Oscar Piastri because he had his lap time deleted in qualifying for going out of track limits. But from what I understood of the whole thing that happened pre-Austria Grand Prix weekend was that with the addition of the gravel traps, that was the track limits. If you can feel that you were on the gravel, you're off the track. If not, you're on the track. So with Oscar saying, we exceed track limits because I didn't touch the gravel, but then he gets his track time. He's like, well, then what are we spending hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars to put in gravel when that's not the track limits? What's the point?
Yeah. It's aesthetically pleasing. No, but like I don't know. I don't know.
No.
But yeah, like we know how hard these guys race.
Yeah.
And gravel is a loose thing. Like, it's not going to stay in place. It's just not. And then I just think you're putting drivers at risk doing that because damn well they're going to get run up to the edge there on the curb, and then they're going to hit the, as we call them in NASCAR, I guess, the marbles. But that's a different thing, but
marbles,
slightly different. But it creates more problems. I think. I guess maybe they should have just gone with grass or something like that, but it's too problematic in my opinion. It's
hard. Yeah. It's a hard one. I mean, I would like to say I also think grass would have just been better, but I mean, these cars are going so fast regardless. I guess the best thing I could say is if you can make just all the walls like safer barriers and stuff like that.
Yeah. Make it like a street course.
Yeah, that's like the best circumstance. But I heard it had something to do with the MotoGP guys as well.
Yeah, so that's another element of it is a lot of these circuits where we have a lot of track limit stuff. And last year we had 1,202 track limits violations. And this year, I don't think I saw any. Besides, I mean, there was the Lando one, and I think Max had a black and white flag at the time. So he almost had one as well. But other than that, we didn't see very many. I mean, nobody besides Lando, I think, I could be wrong, but I don't think anybody besides Lando got a 5-second penalty for track limits.
No.
So I think that the gravel in the race did its job.
Yeah.
I think, and so it did its job, but it was the solution they had, given that they share this track with other race categories, but also with MotoGP.
Right.
Yep.
They're kind of tight on what they can do because they can't. So there's certain things you can't do. Like, I don't think for MotoGP, you don't want a barrier there.
No.
That's probably true. Yeah.
So it's tough on these tracks where you're sharing with other categories because then you gotta find a solution that works for everybody's rules and regulations.
Yeah.
So
configure, do all sorts of stuff, costs money, especially it's probably mostly. I don't know how funding works in that. Is that all on the track to figure out, or would F1 give them some money?
I think they have to clear it with the FIA, but I want to say that that's all F1, or that's all track. Like they have to make those changes themselves because they own.
Fair enough.
Yeah, because I mean, they're what's it called? F1 is letting them like be part of the calendar, so it's like you need to. If this is what we need, then you got to make it happen, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And of course, it goes back to the big cars. To keep going back to that, I guess. I mean, I don't know. I know this thing's over exaggeration, but I was thinking of it as like MotoGP and like racing trucks. It's like that sort of a difference, you know?
Yeah.
It's like with how big the F1 cars. I mean, again, it's 4 wheels versus 2 wheels. I mean, there's only so much you can do. But
absolutely.
Yeah.
That said, do you think that it was right to delete Oscar Piastri's lap time? He was off the track, but he didn't make it to the gravel. Was it a fair lap time deletion or not?
I would need to see.
I understand. I don't think so.
Yeah, I didn't think so when I first saw it, but I mean, again, I could always be convinced otherwise. I don't think so. I think it shouldn't have been deleted, my opinion.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's such a tough one for me because I do agree generally on circuits that you put all 4 tires outside of the white line, you're off the track. That's track limits, and that's it, right? There's no like questioning it or whatever. And at this point, there's sensors inside of a football, like a soccer ball, whatever, so that they can see if it was handball or whatever. You can see the impact. We have these sensors in F1. They know he was off. That's not a question.
Yeah.
Where I'm confused is if they put in the gravel, and from everything that we understood, the gravel was your track limits. If he didn't touch the gravel, there's no reason to call track limits there, especially because he didn't gain anything. If anything, he gained like 1,000th of a second, and that wasn't the difference between pole. You know, like it's not like it would have moved his like change anything for him. And he even said that was my best turn 6 all year, like all race weekend. That was the best line. That was perfect. It was on the left.
Yeah.
So I don't call it track limits, but I think I'd have to see the race director's instructions on what they called track limits for the weekend, which
it's a tough deal to me because like as I'm harder with this because again in the West, like in America with NASCAR and stuff like that, the idea of track limits are much looser than they are in F1 and stuff like that. I mean, but also because, and with that in mind, like if you look at some of the greatest road course highlights for NASCAR, like it involves dudes going off the track and battling and banging a little bit and things like that. That's great racing. So like obviously, but you need to enforce track, like they can't be like to the wind, you know? But I think like in that example, that needs to be loose interpretation of no, that he's fine. Like he's pushing that car and he just touched it just a little bit. Like I don't know. I just think it's too stern of a response to delete that lap time.
I think it also always I think for whatever track limits you're looking at, I think you always have to look at if there is, position gain or position loss or what that looks like. Because in my opinion, if you didn't gain time or you didn't and you maybe or lost time, then I think it shouldn't be enforced, in my opinion. Just because there's no competitive advantage gain.
But that's also really hard to judge. I agree with that, but it's really hard to judge. Like it's hard to tell gain.
Maybe the difference is because it's not. Maybe if that was in the race, it definitely I don't think would meaning like it wouldn't get deleted or he wouldn't have a penalty. But was it in the race? And was it in qualifying? Is that where it was? Qualifying stuff because then it's like they can systematically figure out like all right, this did give him an advantage slightly. It's a little bit more stern in quali. Maybe it should have gotten deleted. But during a race, no, I don't think that ever gets touched.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, let's talk about another element of F1 intervention, sprint weekend this week. How do you guys feel about this layout? Because I will say I was originally not a fan of sprint. I really enjoyed this weekend. This weekend was one of the best weekends this year.
I thought this weekend was great. Yeah, I thought it went well. I mean, the race itself was very nice. I think it fit the race weekend so well this week. Yeah. I know we've had what was our other sprint? Was it in China? Is that where?
So. Yeah, I think
we've only had 2 so far, I believe. I could
Miami
be wrong.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Miami sprint?
Yeah.
I think it was China and Miami, and this is the 3rd.
Okay,
but I could be wrong.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, also like as a fan, like if I was in Austria. I feel like Austria is one of the more alluring tracks to be like at, in my opinion. Yeah. Like I personally believe Austria is beautiful. And to have 2 races in one weekend at Austria, I think that's a great decision for everybody. I think the fans get more action there. We get more action, obviously, as viewers online. But like, I don't know. I think the race itself was great. I think the layout was amazing. I'm a fan. I'm a big fan.
It just adds to the weekend, I mean, of course, in NASCAR we have sometimes 3 races a week between Xfinity trucks and Cup Series. So I think this is kind of like the same thing,
Yeah.
And so I think it's just more racing's more good, Like you can't really complain about it. Other than, I mean, of course, I think we talked about before. I think it could definitely take a toll on drivers for sure, especially in F1.
Yeah.
Wait, did you guys hear? I think Max was live streaming the night before Sprint, and one of his again, probably better than me, Marina, like who he plays with, or whatever. Someone asked him, was like, "Yeah, so like, what's the plan for tomorrow?" He was like, I think I got to get in there at like 11 or something. I don't know. It was like a sprint or something like that. And they like listen to this phone. It's like
casual.
12. All right, a little bit better.
Oh my gosh.
I think it takes a toll. It's incredible. Like I do agree. I think it takes a huge toll on drivers, and I think 6 might be the limit, especially if you're gonna go 24 races, 30 races. Like if you have 30 races and 6 sprints, the drivers and the teams, they're gonna be dead by the end of the season.
Yeah.
And you're gonna do that, and 30 races means you can't even if you ran the entire year long from January to December, you wouldn't be able to do one weekend on, one weekend off.
Yeah.
So that's a lot. That's we get to 30. That's mostly, I think it's back-to-back races almost the entire way through. So you barely get any breaks. That's going to hit your car development. So I really like Sprint, and I want to talk more about Sprint Quali because people, especially towards the beginning of the season, Max is ruining the sport. Silverstone sales are down because Max is so far ahead of everybody else. I think Silverstone's got to look at themselves for that one because all 20 drivers were separated by less than 0.8 of a second at the end of Q1.
It was great. It's phenomenal. I love getting that notification when it came up. Like this is the closest the qualifying session has ever been.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, again, it was for Sprint Quali, but still, like,
it's something.
It is definitely something. I think it was really cool. It was really cool to see that.
Yeah.
I would say it's definitely hard this weekend just with the race that we had this morning. It's like that. That feels like a week ago.
And I was like, I had to go back and like look at the timing sheets and look at the highlights and stuff because I like had like everything that happened Friday and even Saturday morning like completely out the window. Like I couldn't even remember. All I could remember was the order they qualified in and how the race went.
Right.
Such a long weekend. And it's long for us. Imagine how long it is for the teams. So
Yep. What are you gonna do?
What are you gonna do?
I also want to talk about the sprint race start because the sprint race and all of that, there was the battle between Oscar and Lando, and then the battle between Max, Oscar, and Lando, which was a teaser to what today ended up being. But it was such clean racing. I think that might have been my favorite lap of the entire year because it was perfect. Nobody was too aggressive, but they were aggressive. They were fighting each other. And I think on that lap, at least, I think Lando and Max were very well matched. I think Max in the end pulled like a 5-second gap in the sprint. So he was faster, but it was just perfect.
Yeah, it was bliss. I mean, I think especially when you get a result like that in the end, like the beginning of a sprint race, you're adding just more worth to the weekend, knowing that like people, the drivers care. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like if they wanted to just putt along and maybe go finish an 8th and get a point or something like that, then sure. But no, I think the battle between the three of them, or the beginning of it at least, was fantastic.
Yeah, no complaints. No complaints.
No complaints. Do you think, I'll ask you this, Steven, as a McLaren fan, do you think that if in sprint, Oscar hadn't overtaken Lando was on course for the lead, like to win the race, or do you think he wouldn't have had enough to take Max?
It's tough to say, honestly. I mean, Piastri, from what I hear, was really good that race, and Lando was decent too. But it's hard because I mean we see again. You just think about what happened today. It's like of course I think you always want your number one driver to be in that place to win.
Yeah.
It's tough again also because Piastri is right there with him. So it's like you want him to get his first win too. But yeah, gosh, it's tough. I would have loved to see Lando get that win though.
Well, it wouldn't have been Piastri's first sprint win.
This is true.
One in Qatar.
He won in Qatar.
Yeah. Well, of course, the other thing too. I mean, you look at Lando again was hard on himself because of a lost opportunity, which again plays into today.
Yeah.
Right.
But Yeah. What could have been, but is what it is.
Totally what could have been. I think that there's a lot of questions, like recently in the last couple races, surrounding McLaren's indecision, which is a decision in itself, right? You decide not to invert your drivers, or you decide to ask Lando, for example, in Canada, if he wants to go longer, right? When you're not making the decision as a team with all the data, with all the stats with you, you're leaving it up to chance on the track. And I think in a way, it's great. I love seeing teammates fight each other. We'll talk about also after this about Pierre Gasly and Esteban Ocon, all their fights throughout the race, and Alpine's really good race, to be fair. But I don't know, when you want to fight for a championship, you're gonna have to pick. You can't put them side by side. And as much as we love to see teammates fighting each other, and I think Lando and Oscar had a great battle. They were very respectful on track with each other, keeping in mind the team, but also racing hard.
Yep.
I think McLaren at some point, especially now that you have Max and Lando being so tight with each other, they're going to have to make a choice. They're going to have to more than not be like, Oscar, let Lando through. He's faster and he's fighting for a championship. And more than likely that's going to happen next year as well, unless Oscar is better than Lando next year, which, as much as I love Oscar and I think he's a great racer, I think Lando Norris is still better. And he's still more
Oh, yeah. Especially now that Lando has his first win. I mean, for sure. And yeah, it's tough because, of course, and it's like this in every motorsport, just about, I'd say. I don't know if there is a motorsport you can point to where like both sides are treated equally.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like you said, it's really tough for Oscar. I think you gotta let Lando do his thing. I think if it's close enough, like especially in this scenario too, since they're all close to each other, I do think you have to play it smart, and that I think Oscar does have to back down a little bit. He can't slow down Lando and then slow each other down and then, let Max get away. I think there does have to be a point where Zach comes on the radio and is like, okay, guys, we got to stop the fighting, or else Max is going to get away. We got to, keep a train going here.
So, Maria, you're predicting a Valtteri, it's James scenario. Like, you're predicting more of that soon to come.
Yeah, I think so. I think that they're free to fight until it's cost, like Steven said, it's costing them time against Max. Because, like it or not, he doesn't have the best car, but he is the best driver on the grid. Right now, whatever happened today, considering that or not, he's the best driver on the grid. He's driving better than anybody else. He's not making any mistakes. I mean, today, I think ultimately he did make one, made a couple. But in general, we talk about it as in Max doesn't make mistakes. Max is perfect.
Yeah.
Like Tristan said, the fall of Superman, right? Because he's driving perfectly and he doesn't have the best car. So considering I think McLaren has the best car, if they really want this championship, if Lando really wants this championship, they've got to take the fight to him. They've got to prioritize the team. And I don't think that's something where necessarily it's the Valtteri, it's James, but more of something that's communicated to them before the race. If you're in a position to fight each other, but there's Max right there, you're going to fight Max. Use each other to fight Max. Don't slow each other down. And I think that's been communicated before to many teams, many drivers, but I think it's important now.
I think, once you have three drivers like that, you got to let Lando do his thing. If they're farther back, it's just Lando and Piastri, and they're, maybe, maybe like a half a second between each other. You got to let, I think, Oscar catch up there a little bit. Yeah. And then take the fight to Max. And then once Lando and Oscar get to Max, you got to let Lando through. And then Oscar's like, hey, I did everything. I got you up to Max. Now it's your job. At some point, the driver becomes a driver, and there's only so much you can do for him. So.
Yeah, I agree. But if there were ever a situation where, and in kind of a defense of Oscar, a situation where Oscar is driving the race of his life and he's faster than Lando coming up on the back of Max, I also think that they should invert. I think they need to prioritize.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So, I mean, there will be races where Oscar is faster than Lando. We've seen it before, where there's also that aspect of team. And I think that happens at Mercedes. It happens at, I'm not going to say it happens at Red Bull. It happens at Ferrari.
It's straight facts, though.
On that point, let's talk about Checo, because Checo had a weekend. Checo
he had something
by so many people. And
he's a big fan of 7th and 8th place now. This is like his new favorite home.
Mm-hmm.
It's his
king
position.
of the baby.
Where the Red Bull is faster than the Mercedes and the Ferrari, so I would understand if he was constantly fourth. It was Max and Lando fighting for P1, Oscar, and then and maybe even George up there, because I think George has been driving spectacularly and he won today. But he's just so bad. Like,
he's terrible. He's awful.
Yeah.
What is Red Bull doing?
Yeah, it wouldn't be a problem if he didn't have penalties and crashes, I think. I think if he consistently finished 8th or something like that, getting points, I think Red Bull would be content with that. But it's the fact that he's causing problems by doing so is the problem. Like, he's
gotta have some dirt on just, like, everybody. He must have some sort of inside knowledge. It's like, all right, if we get you, keep your ride. You won't say anything, right?
He has a little bit of dirt on them, but I think he just brings in so much money. And I said this right when they signed the contract. If you guys go back to my Fun Fact Friday a gazillion years ago, what feels like,
yeah,
I said it. He brings in a lot of money, not only in sponsorships but in merch sales. So,
yep,
it's forever going to be a question we can't definitively answer. Unless if 40 years from now, Checo does an interview, or Max, or somebody tells us like, oh yeah, like the money is the only reason why they signed him again, or something like that. It's like, but it's, I don't know. I mean, he got beat by Nico Hülkenberg today, so
that's so crazy. That's so crazy.
How does a Red Bull get beat by a Haas? Like,
well, to be fair, Haas did have a very good weekend.
Yeah, they had a great weekend.
Yeah, in defense of Haas, Max was complaining about them because Max overtook them with blue flags and he could not shake them. They were sitting on his rear wing, and again, he was on a 3-stop strategy and Max was on a 2-stop, so they did have a tire advantage. But even then, they were flying. They were definitely the rest.
Yep.
They beat a Ferrari. They beat a Red Bull.
Yeah. Good day in my book.
They had a great day.
Soon to be championship quality team. We'll see.
Man, did you see the radio that I think it was? I want to say it was Hülkenberg when he was on the radio and he was asking like who's got to save tires. He's like, both of us. He's like, after that.
Because right as they were having a little battle when they came out of the pits, I think Nico pitted 1 lap before Kevin, or the other way around. He was the other way around. And so they were having a little bit of a battle, and they come on the radio to K-Mag, and they're like, so conserve your tires. And he goes, F that. Like, is because we're in the middle of this battle, and you're telling me conserve my tires. He literally, lets Nico by, and as soon as Nico's past him, they're like, conserve your tires. Don't do anything. And he was like, come on, man. Is Nico being told the same thing? Because, like, we're in this battle, and now you're telling me it's like it's like a subtle way of prioritizing Nico Hülkenberg, which I would
Yeah.
It's a little unfair. I think at Haas, it's just let him race safely, but let him race.
Fair. Yep.
Yeah.
Thankfully, the two weren't next to each other this week. Hülkenberg.
They got some social distance thing in.
Oh, they didn't have an opportunity to wreck each other or anything like that, but
Yeah.
Oh, man.
That's another argument for Perez too, because Perez is never close to Max, so they can't collide. So he's not crashing into his teammate. So
oh man, could you imagine that team radio?
Perez,
man,
Max had the fight at the front. He had the puncture half. We talked about this right before the pod. He had the puncture. We went about half a lap on 3 wheels, pitted, changed his tires, came back out at least 20 seconds ahead of Perez.
Yeah,
that's the race Sergio Perez had, but he was right in front of a Haas, so that's kind of race Haas. Well, they were fast. They still had a gap to the leaders, obviously, and they're never going to be.
Yeah,
I don't say never, but I don't think they're this year at least. I don't think they'll be like on the podium or anything.
Right.
But they're quick. They're quick, and they've come to a point where at most circuits they're able to fight for the Q3 appearance. They're able to fight for the points.
Yeah. Here's my question, actually. I was just going to ask, from a Red Bull's perspective, of course, Tristan, you as well. What's your perspective? I know we were just talking about the whole Piastri-Norris scenario here. Say if it was the same thing, but with Red Bull, would they treat Sergio the same way? Would they have Max help out Sergio, or they would just kind of be like, "Yeah, you're on your own, bud. We're going 100% on Max."
I mean, man, I look at it like back in like the late 2010s and all that with Hamilton and Bottas. Like it would be like that. Bottas would be known as the second driver. If needed for points reasons or for championship reasons, then Hamilton would be allowed to take the wins compared to Bottas.
Yeah.
I think that's just plain and simple. That's how it would be.
I think Red Bull played their cards earlier this year, or I think it was 2022, 2023. No, 2023 when Max and I think going into race 5, Max and Perez were like tied on points. They each had a win. They each had a P2. They were competitive. Both of them. They played their cards in saying they weren't going to pick a driver. I think the drivers picked for themselves. I think Max showed that he was superior to Checo, and he did it. I think if you put if say let's change the scenario. Say it's Max and Lando at Red Bull, and they're very closely matched. I don't think that Red Bull would make the call, and that's kind of a defense to McLaren because they do have two very competitive drivers, unless it got to a point where their drivers were fighting for the championship against someone else, and then you got to prioritize one car and make that the priority for the rest of the year. So
I more just meant like if Sergio, say, like I was saying, like Sergio and Max Max was second, Sergio was third, and they were trying to say, just for the fun of things, trying to catch Lando. Would they let Lando? I mean, would they let Max go straight after Lando if, say, like they're a little bit farther back, or would they be like, "No, Checo, come with us"? You know what I mean?
No, I think they'd let Max go through.
I think they let Max go through. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, it makes sense. I'm just curious.
Yeah. Because it's Max and Checo, because of the quality of driver, like we've been talking about for years.
Yeah.
Who's the world champion and who isn't? I mean,
it's true. True.
Yeah,
fundamentally.
Exactly. Speaking of a world champion, Lewis got a penalty for crossing the white line on the entry to the pit lane. This is the first time I will ever defend Lewis Hamilton, but in my opinion, that was a stupid penalty.
Ooh.
It looks stupid to me. It didn't make sense to me. I mean, I don't know if that dashes his chances of getting on the podium because he was still 20 seconds behind Carlos, but like at race finish, but still undeserved. So undeserved.
Yeah. I
think he just had a snap. Like he had a snap and his tires didn't he did. Okay, and I think Crofty talked about this. Is like you have to have a strict line with this because if not, they'll take advantage. Like you have a strict line.
Yep.
And we talked about Checo. He got a penalty for speeding the pit lane as well. I think it was like half a kilometer per hour. But like there's certain things you have to have a very strict line with. So in that sense, I do understand why he was penalized, and I'm not by any means like mad he was penalized or anything like that. But and I don't think he is as well. I think he was like, sorry guys, my fault. Like, you know, it happened. But I do think it was a bit tough on him because he lost the car. He didn't even go a full tire over. It was like maybe half a tire over the white line. So
yeah.
And in defense, Alex did something similar, which I unfortunately didn't see the replay of, but I don't believe he was penalized for it. So
right.
I guess that's
I don't know.
Another thing.
Just kind of missed the days when we were able to go full speed into the pits, huh?
Oh my god.
Just
I forgot that F1 also had that era because like every motorsport ever had that like era of like, oh yeah, you can go in the pit lane as fast as you want to get outside, and then one horrific accident happened. It was like, okay, we can't do this anymore.
yeah. Well, I was saying like esports, like when I did racing with that, no one ever did pit speed. Oh my gosh.
Really?
Everyone just
like penalized on like iRacing and that if you don't.
No, at least in Forza anyway. I mean, it just does it for you. You just go in, you pass the line, and it just slows you down and does the whole thing for you. But yeah, we just go full speed in there, no F's given.
Jeez.
Yeah, it is. I mean, this weekend was, as much as it wasn't like, I mean, if you compare it to last year's Austrian Grand Prix, it was not nearly as many penalties given out, but it was kind of penalty moves. So we had the Lando he did end up getting that 5-second penalty for track limits. You had Max's for causing collision. Fernando Alonso, Tristan's fave, also got a 10-second penalty for causing collision with Zhou Guanyu. You got the Perez one, Lewis. Also one that I don't.
The boys were playing bumper cars out there. Sorry, I want to cut you off, but.
That's exactly what was going on. That's exactly what was going on. It's one where you have actually there's a lot of DRS, so you'd think it's like great to overtake, but you don't overtake on the straight. You overtake at the corners, and
it's too short.
So it is quite short in that sense. There was a didn't you go ahead? Go for it.
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say, how do you feel about? I'm curious what your perspective is on if Max should have been given a penalty for unsafe release.
I think it was tight, but no. No. It was very tight. He was coming out and Lando was coming in. So there's not too much you could do. I think there was enough room there. And ultimately, I think we've seen a lot closer, like Crofty said, with like safety cars when everyone's in the pits. I think it's a bit, once the driver's released, so I think Verstappen was released in enough time for Lando. I think it was just on Lando to just hit the brakes real quick, because there was nothing you could do at that point. What are you going to do? Like stop Max? Like he's like already coming out. I think it's kind of too late to call it. Funny enough, I think it was too late to call it an unsafe release. I think Max was released just in the nick of time for it not to be an unsafe release.
Fair enough. But we gotta have like stoplights in the pit lane or something.
See a wide angle. I thought that like the release was fine. I didn't see that if it was close or not. The only angle I saw was we're talking about the slow pit stop, right?
No, this was before that, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Okay, yeah, it was the first stop. It was investigated, but it was I think it was enough. I mean, again, Red Bull didn't have the greatest of pit stops today. Even that one wasn't their fast. I think it was like 2.6, which compared to their 1.9 from last weekend is slow, but also is a very good pit stop still. So there's another pit lane incident that was penalized, not a sporting penalty, but a 40,000 euro fine for Yuki Tsunoda.
Gosh.
And I want to preface, pardon my French or anyone who might be offended by this terminology, but he called the drivers in front of him effing retards.
That's what he said. I'm like, okay.
Jeez, I didn't hear that.
I didn't know English is my second language. I didn't know the full meaning of the R word to not continue to say it, but I don't know. I think it was a little harsh given that Max, I would have told him to penalize him like 50,000 euros. But I don't think Yuki fully understood the extent of the word because again, a lot of people.
It's not his first language either, I don't think, right?
No,
Max.
Japanese.
No, but Max is a lot more. No, you mean Max?
Well, no, I was saying Yuki. I'm like Yuki. That's not his first language. He may just even know.
That's what his argument was. He was like, it's not my first language. I didn't know the full meaning of the word. I apologize for it. He took it with grace. I think it was fine, but I think it was a little bit rough. Like 40,000 euros for that was a bit much.
Yeah, well, I mean, of course, there's always gonna be the argument. It's like, looking at F1 perspective, it's like, 40,000 euros is nothing for an F1 driver. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So, like, I mean, that word is very degrading to a lot of people. So
it's politically incorrect.
I would actually like to say that I think that's a fair, especially for someone in a position of like not authority, but like a position of like social like presence and stuff like that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who follow.
I think the fine was fair.
Yeah.
I think it was interesting too because I have the F1 TV app, and so a lot of times I'll listen to like Max's radio during quali or whatever. And after qualifying, after the race, whatever, you can go back and watch the whole race from his perspective if you wanted to or whatever. But if you go back into the F1 TV app and go to qualifying, they've deleted Yuki Tsunoda as an option to go right along with altogether. I think it was a powerful statement from F1 being like, we don't want anybody else to listen to it. Let's just leave it at that. They also didn't specify exactly what he said in the final like decision that they put out the document. That it didn't say it. It just said inappropriate language. And if you go back and you look it up and everything, then you can see what he said because obviously the internet, and once it's said, it's never erased. But
true.
Yeah, I think it's also important, like you said, social standing. He's got a lot of Japanese fans who English also isn't their first language. So if
exactly,
it's allowing the word to just kind of mean like the same as idiots, which it's not. It's not. It's very different. It's more degrading.
Yeah.
Let's go back to Haas because Haas had an outstanding weekend.
They sure did.
Mercedes as well. Man, it was a great race for them.
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, almost a top 5.
Yeah.
So,
if Max had DNF'd.
Yeah, it's true.
Would have been. So.
But,
yeah.
He didn't. So it's like.
Yeah.
But also, I say that like knowing like I knew that guy was going to eventually like slice through the field again. Add another 10 laps to that, and he might have been contending for a podium. So,
it's crazy to me. I'll say this also, just how fast F1 cars go through pits. Like, you look at, of course, in NASCAR and stuff like that, you have to worry about, the pit cycle and if you're going to be lapped coming out of the pit lane.
True.
F1, that's not even a thought in your mind. No. It's like, you look at like a 5-second gap in NASCAR, it's like, oh gosh, you're going to be coming out like lapped or a lap down or something like that. You have to worry about that. And then F1's like, oh, you're not even going to lose a spot. Don't even worry about it. It's like, it's mind-blowing.
The needle point on F1 is so much more intense, though, because if you do mess up on pit road, it's so much worse.
No, it's true. It's true.
Dramatically worse.
Yeah, and lapping.
What happened, dude, is Lando Norris probably didn't have much of a chance to strike to win this race before that mistake on pit road. Max had what, a 7-second lead or something like that, which was probably
it was around 8 seconds. Yeah.
And then it cut down to a 1.5 seconds, I think. After
that's in DRS range.
Yeah.
And it's so. I mean, obviously there was the aspect for Leclerc that he had to change his front wing, but you saw how quickly, especially on a lap 1 incident, where you're forced to pit and you're last. He came out dead last.
Yep.
After lap 1 with his incident, and he had. I thought it was ridiculous that Ferrari came on the radio and was like, we still have contention for points, and he was running P18.
I did hear that. I'm like, what? No.
So even with Lando DNFing, you were still P11, and I don't feel close to P10. So,
that actually brings up a good point. I was just thinking about it. What is your take on Lando retiring the car there? I think that was a dumb move, in my opinion. Was
that his choice? Not his choice.
They said it was his choice.
He came on the video saying, let's just retire the car. I think there was more damage on Lando's car than there was on Max's car because of the extent.
Oh, for sure.
The puncture left that rear end, the rear suspension really fricked, and he had a little more time. Well, he had to change a front wing, and Max didn't, so I don't think he would have been in the points, which is probably why they decided. Like you said,
I guess that's probably true.
Change is going to cost you an extra 10, 15 seconds, which was pretty much that was definitely behind Nico and Perez. Maybe 8th, 9th.
It could have been also a thing, honestly, where he actually was maybe being the bigger person. He's like, if I keep doing this, I'm gonna wreck people. He's just gonna come out there super angry, and I mean that very well could have been what it was. He was just like, let me calm down. I know we're not going to finish well anyway. Let me get out of the car. Let's just call it a day,
essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's all of it. I mean, let's talk podium now because we skipped over it all day long. I honestly don't remember the podium. I think a lot of the commentators skipped over it because we were all focused on Max and Lando. George Russell, second career race win. He drove spectacularly, and he also called it. Because he spoke to, I think it was Lawrence Barretto on Saturday after quali and said, I'm just going to do my race from third, focus on keeping that position, let the two of them crash out or take each other out at the front. And that is absolutely what happened. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, he knows what's up. Of course, he did signature pose the old.
Oh my God, he did.
that kind of makes me cringe, not going to lie.
I was going to say, I knew we were eventually going to get to the podium. It was like, guys, we had a different winner this week. We should probably talk about him a little bit.
Yeah.
Happy for George. Again, I don't think he's any of our favorites, but I mean, it makes me happy that there's another guy on the podium, P1, that isn't, named Verstappen or, that's pretty much it. Verstappen.
We got there. Wow. That's the first time this season.
There's been 5 race winners now. You obviously have Max, who's won, I think, 7 races or 6 races, with, Lando in Miami, Charles in Monaco, Carlos in Australia, now George here in Austria. So Well, I say here, but I'm not in Austria, but in Austria.
The homeland.
Yeah, I think it's great for him. I think it's great for Mercedes. I think they've been really demoralized by being so far back for a while. I think they left 2021 with a bitter taste, obviously, because of how it ended, and kind of also then coming into 2022, it must have hurt a lot to see how far back they'd fallen and see Red Bull with one of the fastest cars. I mean, 2022, I think, obviously, Ferrari had a great start to the season, but still, like, Red Bull's been so dominant, and Max specifically has been so dominant. It must really hurt for them. And then on top of that, with
good.
I'd say the right hand was on the
solid. Like, again, he's been so good. I mean, his move to take P1 in Canada, like at the beginning of the race, you know.
Yeah, man.
He's been fast. And it's really surprising. It's not surprising, but more so the fact that we thought it'd be a tandem where, like, George was going to hopefully excel, maybe do good this year, and Lewis was going to fall off. But Lewis had a good race, too. Maybe
he did.
Really well equipped for this weekend. Obviously, they shouldn't have won this race. But, like, they did. And it doesn't matter because they did, you know? So
a win's a win.
I don't think George or Carlos went to bed last night thinking I'm going to be on the podium, let alone win the race. I think maybe George thought he could be on the podium for sure. With
George definitely thought he was on the podium.
Safe to say that Carlos Sainz went to bed last night thinking this isn't going to be my race. I mean, I'll do well, but I'm not going to be on the podium.
Even Oscar, Oscar probably has a better chance than Carlos, but I bet Oscar probably didn't even think he was going to be on the podium either. But
maybe. I think before his lap time got deleted, I think it was a safe bet. And I think that's probably, he called it bittersweet because obviously he's on the podium, he's second, and he almost had, I'm going to give him 3 more laps. He would have taken George for the win.
I think so.
Imagine if he had started, because George started in his place at P3. So if Oscar hadn't started P7, hadn't been involved with Charles Leclerc and Sergio Perez on that first lap incident, he could have won the race easily.
He could have.
Then, if you really think about it, it could have been a tragic turn of events where even Max won the race with Oscar in second. Excuse me, because he was very strong. He was a strong contender. So.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Imagine the McLaren room if Oscar won the way that Lando did. Like, he got DNF'd. Could you imagine that?
Man.
Oh, that would be a rough room to be in.
It would be.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Poor Lando.
Anyways, I wasn't quite happy with Lando being driver of the day as well, but we'll let that
I was going to bring that up. I'm like, as much of a Lando fan I am, I'm like, okay, why did he get it, though?
People were saying Hülkenberg should have won it.
I agree.
I saw a lot of moves online talking about that. I was like, that's fair,
The thing is, I think that's a popularity contest. That's about how many people are willing to vote.
Yeah, that's true.
It is.
Every weekend. Lando's gotten driver of the day almost every race almost every race this season. If besides maybe Monaco, because I think Charles got it, and maybe Australia, because probably Carlos got it. But other than that, it's been pretty much Lando all year long. Even if Max has had this great, amazing, dominant performance, it's a popularity contest, and people aren't happy with Max's dominance, and they're really happy with Lando taking the fight to him, even if that caused a collision, even if they were both very aggressive. It's popular, right? We're talking about it for an hour now, so anyway, predictions for the Silverstone GP British Grand Prix.
Oh, baby!
It really is.
It really is.
The Brit just won a race, and now we're going back to Britain. So, I mean, I don't see a world where Russell isn't on the podium. Do I have confidence in this race? No. But I'm going to solidly lock him in for P3. I got George Russell coming in third. And I think there's two guys. There are two guys that are going to be 1-2 for, like, majority of the season. It's Verstappen.
There you go.
And Lando. And again, actually, Hamilton's an interesting one because, again, what if the two Brits ended up on the podium, to double Mercedes?
Yeah, man.
Crazy. I don't see it happening. But I'm going to say Max doesn't make any mistakes this week. He's going to win in Britain. Lando's going to come in second, and Russell's going to come in third. I think that's I know a basic response, but I think that's listen, we've talked about this. None of us have got a prediction right. I think that's a safe prediction. I'm locking it in.
I agree. That was my prediction for today, and up until 30 laps or 25 laps to the end, I was on for the first Lights Out accurate prediction, and then
man.
And then that happened. But what about you?
Well, I was just thinking about it. I feel like I've been kind of throwing darts at it every week, to be honest, other than Lando. But this one, I'm feeling a Union Jack takeover. I'm feeling Lando 1, George 2, Lewis 3.
Crazy.
Yep.
Oh my god.
Now the way I see this happening, of course, I think George. So I'm gonna say Max is probably gonna start second. I'm gonna go second, and then I think Max is gonna try something first lap. I think Lando's gonna be prepared this time, and I think that George is gonna be coming in at third, Lewis fourth, and then something happens. George passes Max, and then.
This is an in-depth prediction. This is
I just want to explain my logic. That's all. And then Lando, George, Lewis.
Interesting, an all British podium.
Yep. Union Jack takeover.
That would be epic. But I think I agree in that I think Max is gonna return to the top. I think he was at the top, right? And he was set to win this race. So I do think he's still going to be there. I think there's going to be another McLaren battle, and I think it's going to be Max, Oscar, Lando.
Wow.
So that's where I'll go with that one.
Okay.
Quote of the day, and I will say it's not a driver, but it is from the Austrian Grand Prix.
Oh, this one or a previous one?
You should know this.
Okay.
Say that one more time.
It's from the Austrian Grand Prix weekend, but it's not from a driver.
Okay.
Okay.
Of course, if he wants a Verstappen for next year, then I hear Jos is available.
Oh, no. Wait, who did say that?
Toto,
gosh.
Right?
No, that's that helmet?
No. But you're very
I know this too. Oh my gosh. Christian Horner.
Yep.
I knew I heard it. I heard it somewhere.
You heard it in this week's Fun Fact Friday.
Yes, that's what it was. Boom.
Yep.
Which leads me to thank you guys so much for watching. Hope this was an entertaining one because I sure as hell had a lot of fun doing this podcast.
Oh yeah.
Again, next week after Silverstone, Monday at 11:30 Eastern Time, as always, as well as our Instagram and TikTok, which are always there for you to see Tech Tuesday, WAG Wednesday, Throwback Thursday, Fun Fact Friday, our predictions, which will be posted pre-race next weekend, as well as the occasional Man on the Street videos. So stay tuned for that. Bye, guys.